An evaluation of inclusive education. An acknowledgement of the country. I acknowledge and pay my respects to the Bunurong peoples, the traditional owners and custodians of the land, waterways and skyways upon which I present. I give my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend the right hand of fellowship to all those who still hold true to continuous duty of care that their ancestors have left for them within their hearts. What is inclusive education? What is inclusive education? To paraphrase Vygotsky 1993, the thesis holds that a child with a disability is not simply a child less developed than his peers, but is a child who has developed differently. If we subtract visual perception and all that relates to it from our psychology, the result of this subtraction will not be the psychology of a child with a vision impairment. In the same way, the child with a hearing impairment is not a child without disability minus their hearing. A child in each stage of his development, in each of his phases, represents a qualitative uniqueness. Coined by Blur in 1911, the term autism derives from the Greek word autos, i.e. self. Leo Kanner 1943 and Hans Asperger 1944 would identify autism spectrum disorder as a separate neurological condition. Judy Singer 1998 would identify it as a variation in neurodiversity. Autism spectrum disorder is a form of heterogeneous neurological diversity characterized by impairments in the student's capacity for social cognition and the presence of repetitive patterns of behavior. It can cause difficulties with social interaction, communication, and participation in activities of the learning environment disables the student in question. Students on the spectrum are categorized into one of three levels. Level 1, i.e. requires support. Level 2, i.e. requires substantial support. And level 3, i.e. requires very substantial support. Our target student is at level 2. History of inclusive education. History of inclusive education. Indigenous Australian languages do not maintain an equivalent word for disability. Instead, an individual's value within the community is measured by their real contribution to it. Disability is talked about in an impairment-based way. Impairment-based language is identity-first language. Exclusionary education is actualized when students with disabilities cannot attend any schools. Ableism is indirect discrimination against a student with disabilities by providing preferential treatment to students without disabilities. The charity model with disability conceptualizes a student on the spectrum as being capable of the same qualitative development as neurotypical peers and asserts that they require continual care by their allied health professionals. Segregated education is actualized when students with disabilities cannot enroll in mainstream schools, often on a separate basis without reasonable adjustments for their diverse characteristics. Gatekeeping is a form of disableism wherein restrictive behavior management practices are utilized against students with disabilities. Othering is a form of disableism wherein stakeholders create distinctions between students with disabilities and the average learner. Separated education is actualized when students with disabilities can enroll in any school within a separate unit without any reasonable adjustments. The medical model of disability conceptualizes autism spectrum disorder as a neurological disorder which requires treatment by allied health professionals before a student can be integrated. Integrated education is actualized when students with disabilities can enroll within any school on the same basis but without reasonable adjustments, thus limiting their capacity to learn. Most schools in Australia operate within integrated education. Inclusive education is actualized when students with disabilities can enroll within any school on the same basis and be afforded reasonable adjustments for equitable access and participation within the learning community, without diagnostic characterization. On the same basis implies all opportunities that are available to students without disabilities must be provided to students with disabilities to a comparable quality. When the opportunity enable equitable access and participation, the opportunity must be reasonably adjusted for the student with disability. The social model of disability conceptualizes impairment and disability as distinct concepts and asserts that disability is the product of an interaction between the student with an environment that cannot be differentiated for the student's unique qualitative development. The human rights-based model of disability extends upon the social model of disability and asserts that students with neurodivergent development maintain the capacity to advocate for their human rights. Former Disability Discrimination Commission of Australia, EANS, supports integration from an early age. Why support inclusive education? Why support inclusive education? Why support legal requirements? Legal requirements. Legal requirements. The Disability Discrimination Act 1992 outlines the rights of all Australians with disability and provides a definition for what discrimination is both in education and other contexts. The Equal Opportunity Act 2010 is Victoria's equivalent to the Disability Discrimination Act 1992. The Disability Standards for Education 2005 outlines the rights of students, the responsibilities of education providers, and provides a definition for what a reasonable adjustment is. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities outlines the rights of all people with disabilities and the responsibilities their stakeholders have. Australia is a signatory to this convention. The Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006 is the Victorian equivalent of the aforementioned convention. It outlines that all people are born free and equal in dignity and rights and provides a definition for, on the same basis, ableism and disableism. Differentiation is adaptation or modification of content, process, product, and effect of a lesson implemented to support the inclusion of all students regardless of the diverse characteristics. Adjustments are adaptations or modifications of the content, process, product, or effect of a lesson implemented to support the inclusion of a student with a disability. An adjustment is considered reasonable if it balances the interests of all parties involved, i.e. the student stakeholders. There are three types of adjustments: curriculum adjustments, instructional adjustments, and environmental adjustments. Policy requirements. Policy requirements. Policy requirements. The Victorian Government Department of Education utilises department policy to clarify the specific legislative requirements. The Victorian Government Department of Education directs the Student Support Group to 18 relevant policies, with explicit reference to students on the spectrum within policy for student support groups. Professional requirements. Professional requirements. Professional requirements. The Australian curriculum maintains that students with disabilities are afforded the right to reasonable adjustments and differentiation by their educators and paraeducators. The Victorian curriculum maintains similar demands. Standard 1.5 requires educators to demonstrate knowledge about diverse characteristics and how to differentiate for them. Standard 1.6 requires educators to demonstrate knowledge of relevant legislation and policy pertaining to inclusive education, to demonstrate the associated pedagogical content knowledge. Who is Luca? Who is Luca? Who is Luca? Who is Luca? Luca is more than a student on the spectrum. He is a son, he is a younger brother, he is a twin brother, and he is a student at our school. Luca and their shareholders. Luca and their shareholders. Luca and their shareholders. Luca maintains the capacity to self-advocate as a human being. Students on the spectrum are at greater risk of not participating in consultation, not finding and maintaining friendships, and unmasking the characteristics of their impairment. Closing this unit enables Luca to integrate himself within the learning community and imperolate an inclusive culture. Integration will enable him to develop a sense of belonging, develop his social cognition, and advocate against peer rejection. Family partnerships advocate for Luca within their parent-teacher relationship. Rainberger 2023 clarifies the beliefs this partnership may maintain, including behavior management systems under stress. Luca is not welcome or segregate schooling is necessary. Closing the unit enables the stakeholder to participate within the student support group and to begin developing a collaborative relationship when concerns are addressed. Educators advocate for Luca within the student-teacher relationship. This can be positive, negative, complicated, or reserved. The quality of advocacy and quality of teaching is predicted by the quality of the student-teacher relationship. Closing the unit strengthens the student-teacher relationship through fostering an inclusive environment and builds closeness with Luca through daily shared experiences. Paraeducators advocate for Luca by educating within a wider pedagogical role. They are deployed, they practice, and they prepare. Closing the unit enables the stakeholder to transition from a role as a provider of separate education to a broker within the student support group. Research indicates this will not improve Luca's academic capabilities, but will improve his sense of belonging. Community organizations advocate for Luca by reconciling the theory, practices, and processes of inclusive education. Closing this unit enables the stakeholder to advocate within the school administration. Allied health professionals advocate for Luca by diagnosing the quality of an adjustment and facilitating other stakeholders' knowledge. Multidisciplinary teams may include a variety of allied health professionals. Closing the unit enables the stakeholder to transition from a remedial to preventative service, wherein this stakeholder can consult and co-produce adjustments that can be embedded within real time. This will impact Luca positively by providing them with adjustments that are relevant and which can be utilized across environments. Bibliography. 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 Bibliography.